and you are tuned into Truth It in the AM. Be prepared for some craziness. Let's go.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. Thank you for tuning in and logging on, and welcome to Truth It in the AM. It is your boy Truth It, and I'm here to address any and all things when it's time to, and it's time to. Yes. So we got a lot of stuff we need to talk about today. North Korea is getting planes ready on the eastern coast of North Korea. Warplanes. We don't know if a war is about to start, but they claim that America has already declared war on them, even though America has denied this. Also, we got to talk about domestic violence. And a man in Massachusetts has been arrested for the murder of his wife, who was only 30 years old. She was a school teacher. So we're going to talk about that as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about domestic violence and what causes domestic violence and where does domestic violence come from. Also on today's show, we're going to be talking about other things as well. We got a lot of stuff on the table to talk about. So let's just get right to it as soon as my computer starts working correctly. So let's start off with Supreme Court of the United States stays execution for man who claims that he was that a racist juror, voted for him to be put to death. So now we have a man who's supposed to be put to death, who should be put to death allegedly, because a racist juror says that because he was black, they wanted to see him die. Clarence Thomas, one of the Supreme Court Justice, African American Supreme Court Justice, says that he would not have allowed the stay of execution, but I guess they voted on it, and that's how it's going to be. So I'm a firm believer of death row. I'm a firm believer of executing people. I wish everybody, not everybody, but I wished instead of by lethal injection or by other means that people would be stoned to death. Stoning is cheaper. It doesn't cost us taxpayers anything. You just get a rock. I'm telling you, I would volunteer to do it myself. But these are the things that we have to deal with. So we have a man who was found guilty of killing his sister-in-law, and he went to court. This is in the 90s. He was found guilty. This is another thing about executions that I don't like. It takes too long. There's no way that he should be in jail over 20 years on death row. Just because he wants to do all kinds of appeals and stuff like that. No. Let's get the show on the road. Let's get it popping. Let's get it going. So, in our first story of Truth in the AM, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States stay of execution. His name was Keith Tharp, and this happened in Georgia. So, let's get right to it. The U.S. Supreme Court issued a stay of execution Tuesday night for a Georgia death row inmate who argued that a racist juror voted to put him to death because he was black. Keith Tharp, 59, was scheduled to die at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. But that did not happen. That did not go down. In the murder of his sister-in-law, Jacqueline Freeman, the justices granted a stay while they consider whether to take up his appeal. If the justices decide not to hear the case, the stay will be lifted and he will be put to death immediately. Conservative justices Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Neil Gorsuch dissented, saying they would not have granted the stay. In post-conviction appeals, Tharp did not deny killing Freeman. He sought a stay of execution based in part on racist comments from a juror who has since died. In an interview 7 years after Tharp's sentencing, juror Barney Gaddy used the N-word in reference to Tharp and other black people and wondered if black people even have souls. Tharp's lawyer argued that based on the jurors violated Tharp's constitutional rights to a fair trial. Furthermore, his attorneys argued that Tharp is ineligible for execution because he is intellectually disabled. Tharp convicted in shooting of sister-in-law. Tharp and his wife were estranged when the crime occurred on September 25th, 1990. Prosecutors said Tharp stopped his wife and sister-in-law in the road as they drove to work. According to court records, he grabbed Freeman, his sister-in-law, from the vehicle and shot her before throwing her in a ditch and shooting her again, killing her. The then prosecutor alleged Tharp raped his wife and took her to withdraw money from a credit card union where she was able to call the police for help, according to documents. And he does not deny doing this. He does not deny shooting this woman and throwing her in a ditch. He should be stoned to death. They should not stay his execution, and if I was Clarence Thomas, I would not stay his execution either. I don't care if this juror was racist and thought this way about people. What this man did was disgusting and it was heinous, and this goes towards the domestic violence that I'm talking about today. Husbands, and yes, women are guilty of some domestic violence too, but we're going to talk about the husbands today. We're going to talk about the men. It's unfortunate that men have to do things like this because things in the marriage don't go their way. 3 months later, after he was convicted of malice, murder, and kidnapping, Tharp was sentenced to death. Tharp's appeal centered on the post-conviction testimony of Barney Gaddy, a white juror in his trial. During the jury selection for the initial 1991 trial, Gaddy told attorneys from both sides that he could be fair and impartial during the trial, said Kammer. Tharp's attorney with the Georgia Resource Center, a nonprofit that offers legal representation to prisoners on death row. Then, in May 1998, lawyers from Georgia Resource Center conducted interviews with each juror as part of a routine investigation to prepare for Tharp's petition for a habeas corpus, the process of determining whether his imprisonment was unlawful. And this is the man that pulled his sister-in-law out of a car, shot her, threw her in the ditch, and shot her again. And this man is wondering if his jailing is unlawful. This is why I hate people. This is disgusting. This man should be put to death, and that's all I'm saying. In his interview, Gaddy showed that he harbored very atrocious racist views about black people, Kammer said. According to his affidavit, Gaddy said, "In my experience, I observed that there are two types of black people. One is black folks, and two are the N-word." This is what Chris Rock said. There's black people and there's Negroes. The unfortunate word for Negroes. Gaddy went on to say in his affidavit, "I felt Tharp, who wasn't in the good black folks category in my book, should get the electric chair for what he did." As of 2001, Georgia carries out its executions by lethal injection. So what? He thought he should get the electric chair. So what? Maybe he should have. After studying the Bible, I have wondered if black people even have souls, Gaddy said. Now, I don't know about that comment. That Comments a little much to me. Gaddy later said in the deposition that he did not intend to use the N-word as a racial slur, according to court documents. So this man might get his life spared because of a white person's views of a murderous man being the N-word. Well, in my opinion, if he did murder this woman the way he did, he is the N-word, and shame on him. I don't care. Weeks after the interview, Tharp's attorneys returned to Gaddy's home to read his statements back to him, periodically stopping to ask him if his statements were accurate, the court documents say. Gaddy had only one correction, but the rest of his statements stood. Court documents filed by Tharp's attorney said he signed the affidavit under oath. He basically admitted his criteria for deciding the sentence of Mr. Tharp to death had much more to do with race than any of the facts of the crime, which is a lie. This man did the crime. He should be put to death. I don't understand why anyone would even argue to keep this man alive, even after considering what Gaddy had said. But Cameron argues he never denied the fact that he held the views that he stated in the initial testimony. More claims of constitutional violations. Gaddy also said during jury selection that he has no connection to Jacqueline Freeman's family. However, in the same affidavit in which he made remarks in question, Gaddy also admitted to knowing the Freemans. Now, that is something that would constitute keeping him from being put to death. If someone knows, a juror is not supposed to know or have had any contact with any of the victims or the alleged victims of the crime. So that is something right there. Both of Gaddy's false statements during jury selection that he could be fair and that he had no connection to the case constitute violation of Tharp's right to an impartial trial under the Sixth Amendment, Tharp's attorney claimed. They also argued that Tharp has an IQ of about 70, which would make him ineligible for execution under federal law, which bars the death sentence for people with intellectual disabilities. Put this man to death, please. Put him to death right now. Bang! There's no way this man should be left alive because there's no way you can release him. What would stop him from doing the same thing again? Jurors' laws state that juror testimony cannot be used to impeach the verdict, render it invalid, even if it involves racial bias, Cameron said. At the time Gaddy made statements in question, this rule kept Tharp's attorneys from being able to use them to prove his death sentence was a result of racial bias. Essentially, a juror's racial bias constitutes a violation of the defendant's rights to an impartial jury guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment and prevents defendants from being able to prove a violation of their constitutional rights. Sometimes people's constitutional rights should be taken away. When you kill another human being the way he did, it should be, I don't see how you can keep or argue to keep this man's constitutional rights. To me, it's insane and it's very unfortunate. We also have more domestic violence news, unfortunately. A Massachusetts man was accused of killing someone, unfortunately. Killing his wife. His wife was only 30 years old. And these are the types of things that we have to deal with. Husband arrested for murder of his wife, who was a second grade school teacher. Unbelievable. This woman was young, she was beautiful, and I don't know. The husband of a Massachusetts second grade teacher found dead in her home has been arrested for murder, police said. Andrew McCormick was arrested Tuesday after the body of his wife, Vanessa McCormick, was discovered at their house in Revere, WCVB reported. The evidence suggests that her murder was a crime of domestic violence, committed in the very place where she should have been the safest, her own home, Suffolk County District Attorney Daniel Connolly said. Police responded Saturday afternoon to a 911 call from Andrew McCormick. The 30-year-old wife was unresponsive when authorities arrived and showed signs of trauma to her body. Medical examiners said that she suffered a blunt force injury to the head, sharp injuries to the neck, and asphyxiation. Authorities reviewed surveillance camera footage in the investigation. Evidence suggests that the killer made concerted efforts to clean up the crime scene and dispose of related items, Connolly said. The couple shared a 1-year-old daughter, according to family members. Another man who is disgusting, that doesn't deserve constitutional rights, that should be put to death. Unfortunately, Massachusetts does not have the death penalty. If there's any way they can make this a federal crime, then maybe they can put him to death, which would make the world a better place. Unfortunately, I don't think that there is that. My sister was the world's best mother, her sister Angela Masuki said. She did everything for her daughter and had so many plans for her. Vanessa McCormick taught at Connery Elementary School in Lynn, Massachusetts, where she was remembered this week. Our school community is heartbroken, Principal Mary Dill said in a statement. Vanessa was loved by students, parents, and colleagues. Her husband is set to be arraigned for the killing Wednesday in Chelsea District Court. It just makes you wonder what happened when they were in their apartment together or in their home together. What would cause him to snap like that, to choke her, to try to kill her, to do all the things that he did? It makes you wonder what would cause a person to snap, or what would cause a person to get that angry. I have no real answers for that, but I did look up things such as what causes domestic violence. And usually domestic violence is a thing about power, and unfortunately, a lot of times it's done by men. We're going to take a break, and when I get back, we're going to talk more about the domestic violence and what causes domestic violence in a lot of cases. Be back on Truth It in the AM. Are you a manufacturer, dealer, or distributor in the following industries? Agricultural equipment, material handling, construction machinery, power generation, commercial and retread